It's day 73 of a classified patrol, and 400 feet beneath the frigid waters of the North Pacific, the USS Virginia is facing an environmental challenge that would make any eco-warrior weep. 135 sailors have been sealed inside this nuclear-powered steel tube for over 2 months, generating thousands of pounds of waste with absolutely no possibility of taking out the trash, calling a plumber, or cracking open a window for fresh air. This isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially deadly. Unlike surface ships that can dump waste overboard or stop at ports for resupply, submarines operate under a brutal reality. They're completely cut off from the outside world. They begin their patrol with a full load of foodstuffs and other supplies adequate for the crew, and that's it. No delivery trucks, no supply runs, no emergency services, just 135 people, their waste, and the crushing pressure of the deep ocean surrounding them. The math is terrifying. Every day, this floating city generates hundreds of pounds of solid waste, thousands of gallons of wastewater, and consumes enough oxygen to suffocate everyone aboard within hours if the life support systems fail. Add to this the fact that submarines are some of the most space-constrained environments ever built, where every cubic inch is precious real estate, and you have a recipe for environmental catastrophe. But here's where the story gets fascinating. Instead of drowning in their own waste, submarine crews have developed the most sophisticated recycling systems on the planet. They've turned necessity into an art form, transforming what should be an environmental disaster into a masterclass in closed-loop sustainability. These underwater warriors don't just recycle, they've created a world where absolutely nothing goes to waste, where even the air they breathe gets used over and over again, and where empty food cans get transformed into waste disposal containers through pure ingenuity. What you're about to discover is how 135 sailors, trapped in a metal tube thousands of miles from land, have become the world's most unlikely environmental pioneers. To understand just how extreme submarine recycling has become, you need to grasp the unique hell of submarine logistics. Imagine packing for a camping trip that will last 4 months, with 134 of your closest friends in a space smaller than a decent-sized house, with absolutely no possibility of stopping at a gas station, grocery store, or hardware store along the way. Now imagine that any mistake in your packing could kill everyone. All U.S. submarines are nuclear-powered and have the ability to stay submerged for entire missions lasting up to several months, with control of the ship's atmosphere being literally a matter of life and death. The logistics of this extreme isolation begin before the submarine even leaves port, in a pre-deployment ritual that would make Marie Kondo proud. The limited available space in a submarine means that all unnecessary packaging material must be eliminated. Cardboard boxes are unpacked, and the cardboard is left at the dock. Sailors spend days stripping away every piece of excess packaging, every unnecessary wrapper, every extra container that doesn't directly contribute to survival. This isn't environmental consciousness, it's pure survival mathematics. Every cubic foot of storage space must earn its keep. Food cans get their labels removed and contents marked with permanent markers to save space. Spare parts get unwrapped and repackaged in the most compact configuration possible. Even toothbrushes come aboard without their retail packaging. What emerges is the most ruthlessly efficient packing operation in human history, where waste isn't just discouraged. It's literally impossible to accommodate. But the real challenge begins once the submarine submerges and the hatches seal shut. Suddenly, that carefully curated collection of supplies must sustain 135 people for months, with zero margin for error. The waste they generate can't simply disappear. It has to go somewhere within the submarine's steel walls. Environmental concerns take a backseat to a more pressing reality: operational security. Every piece of trash that goes overboard could potentially reveal the submarine's position to enemy forces. Old sailors joke that even old eggs are pre-broken before being put into disposal units, because the sound of an eggshell cracking underwater could give away their location to sophisticated sonar systems. This paranoia extends to every aspect of waste management. A floating candy wrapper could lead enemy satellites to track the submarine's path. A distinctive piece of debris could reveal which port the submarine departed from, compromising future operations. In this environment, recycling isn't just environmentally responsible. It's a classified national security operation where every scrap of material must be accounted for, repurposed, or disposed of with military precision. But the most impressive recycling magic happens with the stuff you can't see, the air you breathe and the water you drink. While environmentalists on land debate whether to use reusable water bottles, submarine crews have taken recycling to an almost absurd extreme. They're literally breathing each other's exhaled air and drinking each other's shower water, and they've been doing it for decades. The air recycling system aboard a nuclear submarine is like having a massive lung that never stops working. When submerged, the air in the submarine is continuously recirculated using centralized fans with electrostatic precipitators to filter out particulates and aerosols, and chilled water coils to cool and remove excess moisture. Think of it as the world's most sophisticated air purifier, except instead of cleaning the air in your living room, it's keeping 135 people alive hundreds of feet underwater. Here's where it gets truly sci-fi. Submarines don't carry spare air. Instead, they make it from scratch. Oxygen is generated by electrolysis of seawater that has been purified using reverse osmosis. Essentially, they're splitting ocean water into hydrogen and oxygen using electricity from the nuclear reactor. The hydrogen gets dumped overboard, while the life-giving oxygen gets pumped into the submarine's atmosphere. It's like having a chemical factory that turns seawater into breathable air, running 24/7 for months at a time. The water recycling is equally mind-bending. These systems utilize advanced filtration technologies to convert seawater into potable water, meeting the stringent standards required for human consumption in a closed environment. Every drop of water aboard gets used multiple times. Shower water gets treated and becomes drinking water, which eventually becomes shower water again in an endless loop. The same H2O molecules that started as Pacific Ocean seawater might end up in a sailor's coffee cup, then in the submarine's reactor cooling system, then back in someone's drinking glass. The precision required for this recycling is staggering. The oxygen level is maintained below an upper limit of 22% to prevent increased fire risk while staying above 18% to keep everyone conscious. Carbon dioxide levels are constantly monitored and scrubbed from the air using chemical systems that would make a chemistry professor weep with joy. Meanwhile, hydrogen gas, a byproduct that could literally explode and kill everyone, gets continuously monitored and removed. This isn't just recycling, it's creating a completely artificial ecosystem where every molecule of air and water gets reused dozens of times. These sailors are living inside what amounts to a closed terrarium experiment, except instead of growing plants, they're keeping human beings alive in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. While air and water can be recycled into infinity, solid waste presents a different challenge entirely. You can't exactly electrolyze a candy wrapper back into its constituent atoms, and you definitely can't breathe a discarded coffee cup. So submariners have developed what might be the most ingenious and slightly terrifying solid waste management system ever conceived. They turn their trash into ammunition. Every piece of solid waste aboard a submarine begins its journey through a process that would make any efficiency expert weep with admiration. Dry waste is consolidated using a trash compactor and then placed in special cans that aren't bought from any store. They're fabricated on board from pre-punched galvanized perforated steel sheets using a roller tool. Picture a sailor in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, hundreds of feet underwater, essentially doing metalworking to create custom trash cans. The resulting containers are precisely 28.5 inches long and 9 inches in diameter, with metal tops and bottom caps that seal tighter than a pharaoh's tomb. But here's where it gets beautifully weird. These aren't just trash cans. They're ballistic projectiles. Metal weights are added to ensure that the cans will sink straight to the bottom of the ocean floor because a floating garbage can is essentially a billboard advertising "Secret Submarine was here." The cans are ejected from the submarine using a trash disposal unit, or TDU, which sounds innocent enough until you realize it's basically a torpedo tube for garbage. The TDU is a long cylindrical vertical tube connected to the ocean through a ball valve. Imagine a giant underwater cannon that shoots compressed trash instead of explosives. The process is part engineering marvel, part military precision, and part pure desperation. Several cans are stacked atop one another in the TDU like the world's most expensive ammunition. Then the top of the TDU is sealed by closing a pressure cap. When the ball valve opens, the cans get ejected through a combination of gravity and air pressure, shooting out into the ocean depths like the world's most environmentally questionable care packages. The engineering brilliance doesn't stop there. The metal containers are made on the submarine from sheet metal, meaning these sailors have essentially become underwater blacksmiths, transforming raw materials into functional containers through pure necessity. It's like watching someone solve a Rubik's Cube while blindfolded and underwater. Technically impressive, slightly insane, and absolutely essential for survival. The timing of these trash torpedo launches is critical. Mission considerations may force waste disposal operations to be suspended for periods when stealth is paramount. You can't exactly fire your garbage cannon when enemy submarines are lurking nearby, listening for any sound that might reveal your position. So, trash builds up, compressed and waiting, until operational security allows for what submariners euphemistically call waste disposal operations, which is military speak for shooting our garbage into the abyss. The psychological impact of this system cannot be overstated. These sailors aren't just throwing away trash, they're conducting tactical operations with their leftover lunch. Every piece of waste becomes a potential security risk, every disposal operation a calculated military maneuver. It's recycling meets warfare, sustainability meets national security, all wrapped up in a process that turns ordinary sailors into underwater waste disposal specialists armed with pressurized garbage launchers. But the most mind-blowing recycling story doesn't happen with daily trash or life support systems. It happens with the submarines themselves. Modern submarines have a range of recycling capabilities, including air, water, and metals, but nothing quite compares to watching a 7,000-ton nuclear submarine get transformed from an instrument of war into raw materials for the next generation of underwater vessels. It's the ultimate recycling project, turning billion-dollar military assets into scrap metal, spare parts, and environmental success stories. The onboard metal recycling starts small, but thinking big. Every piece of scrap metal generated during repairs, maintenance, or modifications gets carefully sorted, processed, and either reused aboard the submarine or stored for later recycling. Aluminum cans from the galley don't just get compressed. They get transformed into spare parts through improvised foundry work that would make any makerspace jealous. Steel shavings from machining operations get collected, sorted, and often melted down to create custom tools and replacement parts. These sailors aren't just maintaining their submarine, they're running a floating metal recycling operation that would put most land-based facilities to shame. But the real spectacle begins when submarines reach the end of their operational lives and enter the ship submarine recycling program, a process so thorough it makes regular recycling look like amateur hour. When a nuclear submarine gets decommissioned, every single component gets evaluated for reuse, recycling, or safe disposal. In the process of submarine recycling, all hazardous and toxic wastes are identified and removed, and reusable equipment is removed and put into inventory. Scrap metals and all other materials are sold to private companies or reused. Picture this: a submarine that once prowled enemy waters gets systematically dismantled by crews who approach it like the world's most expensive Lego set. Sonar equipment that cost millions gets refurbished and installed in newer submarines. Steel hulls that withstood crushing deep ocean pressure get cut into pieces and sold to steel mills where they're transformed into everything from cars to skyscrapers. Even the nuclear reactor compartments, the most dangerous part of the entire vessel, get carefully removed, sealed, and transported to special disposal facilities where they're monitored for decades. The recycling statistics are staggering. Each submarine contains hundreds of tons of high-grade steel, aluminum, copper, and exotic metals that are too valuable to simply throw away. The recycling process removes and refurbishes components having value to the Navy and cuts apart the remainder of the submarine to allow segregation and recycling of metals and other materials of value. What emerges is a supply chain where yesterday's submarine becomes tomorrow's submarine, where the steel that once protected sailors in World War II gets reforged into hulls that will protect sailors in conflicts not yet imagined. The environmental impact is equally impressive. By recycling decommissioned submarines instead of simply sinking them or storing them indefinitely, the Navy prevents thousands of tons of materials from becoming underwater monuments to military excess. Instead, these vessels get a second life as bridges, buildings, and new submarines, a continuous cycle of destruction and creation that turns instruments of war into the raw materials for peace, prosperity, and occasionally more instruments of war. It's the ultimate example of military efficiency meeting environmental responsibility, where nothing gets wasted and everything gets a second chance at useful service. As our USS Virginia continues its silent patrol through the depths of the Pacific, her crew carrying on the daily routines of breathing recycled air, drinking reclaimed water, and transforming their waste into precisely engineered projectiles. It's worth stepping back to appreciate what we've just witnessed. These 135 sailors haven't just solved an environmental problem, they've accidentally created the most advanced closed-loop ecosystem in human history. Think about the absurd beauty of what happens aboard a nuclear submarine. Molecules of oxygen that were part of seawater this morning become part of a sailor's breath by afternoon. Water that started as someone's shower becomes someone else's coffee. Empty soup cans get reborn as custom waste containers, then fired into the abyss with the precision of a military operation. Even the massive steel vessel itself eventually gets dismantled and reborn as bridges, buildings, and new submarines in an endless cycle of military-industrial reincarnation. This isn't the kind of environmentalism you see at Earth Day rallies or in corporate sustainability reports. This is survival environmentalism, where recycling isn't a feel-good choice, but a life-or-death necessity. These sailors have achieved something that environmental activists can only dream of. A truly zero-waste lifestyle where every atom gets accounted for, every resource gets maximized, and waste literally cannot exist because there's nowhere for it to go. The irony is delicious and deeply troubling at the same time. The world's most environmentally sustainable closed-loop system exists inside weapons of war, operated by people whose primary job is to remain hidden and, if necessary, destroy things. The most advanced recycling technology on the planet serves the military-industrial complex, not the environmental movement. The ultimate example of living in harmony with finite resources happens inside machines designed for the precise opposite of harmony. But maybe that's exactly the point. When your life depends on making every molecule count, when waste could literally kill you and your shipmates, when you're sealed inside a steel tube for months with zero margin for error, that's when human ingenuity reaches its peak. That's when recycling stops being a lifestyle choice and becomes an engineering masterpiece. As we face global environmental challenges that seem increasingly impossible to solve, perhaps we should look to these underwater pioneers for inspiration. Not because we should all live in submarines, but because they've proven that when survival is on the line, humans can create closed-loop systems that work flawlessly for months at a time. They've demonstrated that zero waste isn't just a utopian fantasy. It's an operational reality that happens every day, 400 feet beneath the ocean's surface. The next time someone tells you that comprehensive recycling is too complicated, too expensive, or too impractical to implement, remind them about the 135 sailors who've been doing it perfectly for decades in the dark, under crushing pressure, surrounded by people trying to kill them. If they can recycle everything in the most hostile environment on Earth, maybe the rest of us can figure out how to recycle our coffee cups on dry land.